What's up, guys? This is Rio, and today we're in a 2020 BMW X5. This is a 40i. It's an X40i, so it's an X-drive, four-wheel drive. It's a 3-liter inline 6 motor, making 335 horsepower, 330 pound-feet of torque. And I think it's one of the best mid-size luxury SUVs you can buy. And I'm gonna explain to you guys why I think that. So we're gonna pull out and take this thing for a drive, and I'll explain why I think this is a great car. Now, this is a mid-size SUV, which is hard for me to believe because it's pretty big, and it's definitely a lot bigger than the X5 started out as, with the E53 chassis back in, I think, '99 when they first came out. It's quite a bit bigger and still considered mid-size. So this car is a huge improvement from the previous generation BMW X5. So that was a car that I think ran only from 2015 to 2018, really short lifespan. I think that's correct, maybe 2013 and 2018, but nonetheless, really short lifespan. This car's been out since 2019, so this is the second model year. I think the exterior design is beautiful, and we'll get to that, but the main improvement is the interior. So people give BMWs a lot of crap, and have given BMWs a lot of crap for not having the nicest interiors, basically having not updated their interiors when they release a new model. BMW clearly is taking that into consideration right now, because it seems as though all their new models have really, spruced up interiors, and this car is no exception. So finally you get a really, upscale interior design. I've always been a fan of BMWs, but I'm even more so a fan of this interior. You have a digital dash, which is always fun these days. A huge, I think it's gotta be 11 or 12 inch iDrive screen here with the new BMW iDrive system that you can speak to. So it has Hey BMW, and overall, the overall materials being used and everything, top notch. Yeah, so the overall materials being used are fantastic. The seats are exceptional for an SUV, especially a non-performance oriented SUV. This is not the M50i, let alone the full-fledged M variant of this car. This is essentially a base X5, albeit it has the all-wheel drive, which I guess puts it one notch above pure base, but this is, a standard X5. So the fact that this has, adjustable side bolsters and little touches like that that make it feel special, and then it has ambient lighting, which looks really, really cool at night. And it has also what I like, which is aluminum trim instead of wood trim. So again, it makes it feel a little sportier, considering, again, this is a more base X5. Lovely. We have a stop sign red light because it's broken. Okay, let's see if everyone knows how to cooperate. Seems like they do, so let's get it. But moving on to the exterior, because I think otherwise, there is also a really nice sunroof, moonroof, really large. Moving on to the exterior though, I'm a big fan of it. Some people think it looks a little funky. I think it's also a huge improvement from the previous X5. And where I really like it is the headlights and taillights. So I'm a big sucker for headlight and taillight design language, especially headlight design. Now this car has the base headlights. There are adaptive laser LEDs above this that look super, super cool, and they think they come standard on the X5M. So you'll always, I think, see them on that. The big difference is these kind of have these half DRLs that get cut off after a certain point, whereas the adaptive LEDs have this full swooping DRL, daytime running light. So you'll notice it via that. They also, I'm sure, have much better performance being their laser lights versus the these being just basic LEDs. I should actually mention that this has what look to be like metal designed paddle shifters, and I know it's the silliest thing for an SUV like this, but it actually makes the cabin feel a little bit higher quality when comparing it to the Q7 and the GLE. At least the Q7 for sure comes only, no matter what, with plastic, and I think the GLE, depending on the trim level, can also come with metal if you get the AMG body kit and the AMG steering wheel. But this has the base non-M Sport steering wheel, because this is not an M Sport trim level, and it still has these paddles. But going back to the exterior, so the headlights nonetheless still look really cool. They look even cooler when the upgraded ones. The taillights look exceptional, and they only come this way. Basically, there's no lower or higher level taillight. What I really like about them is they have this three-dimensional component, which up close looks very, very cool. On top of that, they just look really nice, and they're one unique piece. At first, they kind of caught me by surprise because they kind of went away from BMW's original taillight design language, and they've kind of continued that with the subsequent models that have come out, the 3 Series, the 4 Series. But on this car in particular, I think they work really well. They work a lot better in this car, in my opinion, than they do on the X6 or the X4 with more too many angles, you know, more angular design. But the one area, or the two areas that this car really stands out design-wise, the sculpted hood lines, they kind of give it this snout look. And I think overall, even in this base trim, this car looks way more aggressive than a lot of its competition, in particular the Q7 and the Mercedes GLE. That's what I think Audi's design language is all about, you know, just being pretty standard and, let's say, executive feeling, but lacks a little bit of character and heart. And this car looks really tight. The Mercedes looks a little bit bloated. This just looks angry, and I think if you see it in an X5M, it looks just like the shark from Finding Nemo, just super aggressive, and like you'll totally see that snouty look I'm talking about. But this car, again, has these hood lines that, you know, give you that sense. You can kind of see them when you're driving, so you get this little, you know, reminder that you have an angry hood and an angry front fascia in general, again, even though this is pretty base. The side profile is okay. I don't think, you know, it holds any water to the Porsche Cayenne or even the Audi e-tron, which I think both have really, really beautiful side profiles. But the rear three-quarter view looks really clean on this car, and it really gives it this sporty, elegant, but yet strong and muscular look. And I think that's something that the Audi and Porsche and other cars in the segment often don't do as well, even the Range Rover Sport. That brings me to the wheels, where this car has 20-inch wheels. Standard are 19s, but above that, there are also 21s and 22s. So above this car's 20s, there's two higher levels. And I gotta say, with the 21s, you get, and the 22s, but even just going one level above this, you get quite a bit of a wider rear tire. I don't know the exact inches, but you go from, I believe, a 275 rear tire on the 20-inch wheels that this car has to a 315, I believe, in the rear with the 21s. So that's quite a sizable difference. You know, adds to that muscular squatted look in the rear of the X5, and the fact that you can get them on a base non-M Sport like this car as an option is really cool. But of course, on an M Sport trim, on an M50i, and then on top of that on the M and the M competition, they're more likely will come with a wider tire. So this has something that about every BMW is going to have now, which is the enormous front grills, the front kidney grills. They're just plain huge. I don't mind them too much, and I think on certain models they work better than others, and I don't think they're going to look, well, they're interesting on the new 4 Series. We'll see if they look better on the M3 and M4 because of the, you know, more aggressive body design. But on this car, they look pretty cool, and they have that active grill where parts of it can open and close depending on how much air it actually needs to feed to the radiator and intake and whatnot up there. So it is a little funky. It can close when it's parked, which I actually think is kind of cool. But something that I don't love about the exterior are the exhaust tips, and they're better than just having pure fake exhaust tips, but they're just kind of like exhaust surrounds, and the pipe is inside of it. And it's something that a lot of brands are doing at this point, either just putting no exhaust or just a trim piece and then an exhaust, you know, angled down. At least in this car, there is an actual pipe behind this, you know, trim piece. I still prefer a regular actual exhaust pipe. They have, I believe they've maintained that for the actual M model with the quad tips being real tips, so that's nice, but little things, it's not horrible. The speaker system is really not amazing, and I would say that if you can upgrade for to the Harman Kardon, I definitely would. I want to take a quick break and do the tall boy test, and we'll finish the car up after. So here you go, tall boy test. Okay, so one thing that I don't like is the mirrors. I don't dislike their design. I think they look really cool. They're just a bit small, and I'm, you know, so used to now the Audi Q7 and Q5 having delightfully large mirrors, and also older X5s, especially the second generation X5s, the F15s, had quite big mirrors for their body. And this car, especially the driver's side mirror, I feel like it's a bit small. Could be a little bit of a nitpick on my part, but you know, they just feel like, it feels like they didn't change the mirrors from the previous gen to this gen much, and I don't think they really did. I think think that's just a little disappointing. Now, this particular car has a whole bunch of safety features. So it doesn't have adaptive cruise control, but it does have blind spot detection, lane keep assist, or it shakes the steering wheel if you start drifting out of your lane. It does lack certain cameras. I think it only has a rear view camera. It's missing the surround view camera, or the top view camera, and some of the cars also have this new 3D thing where you can see the car virtually from outside basically. So it's missing some of those things that kind of bother me a little bit at this price. Speaking of price, this car is just over $64,000 new, so $64,500 I think is right around where it was at. So again, not the most base model, but yes, I will admit this is pretty close to the base price of an X5, and it is missing leather. It has vinyl seats and little things like that. I'm happy it makes up for it with certain things like the 20-inch wheels, the nicer trim, and the come to me please, ambient lighting. But it doesn't have a ton of other stuff. Sometimes, depending on how your seat is positioned, you might feel like you're sitting a little higher up in this car than you will in some of its competition, particularly in the Audi, any of the Audi competitors of this car, whether it's the e-tron, the Q7, the Q8. They have a higher shoulder length, so they all kind of feel more like sedans than they do like huge SUVs. I love the new iDrive system, and the screen is so big and it feels intuitive enough to use as a touchscreen. The climate control is a little funky, definitely nowhere near as bad as the Mercedes system, but it's starting to fall behind the Audi, and the Audi is just so much more intuitive. And now with the big screens and the facelifted Q7s and all the other Audis, you're just gonna have so much more control and everything feels more natural. And here it's, the screen's a little bit small and the buttons are, they're actually really nice, just a little bit less, it's still just harkening back to BMW's old ways of having more buttons. And I actually prefer that in certain ways, but also understand that when you compare that to a nice screen where everything is easily accessible right here, the Audi, generally speaking, does win. And I kind of brushed over the digital dash, but I gotta say also that it's not the, it's not the best system in regards to like modularity and being able to customize things where you want them. You kind of basically can just switch what happens on the right side of the screen. Again, for me personally, it's not a huge complaint. I think having a large big screen, or a large main screen in the middle with the iDrive, more than makes up for it. But it's definitely noteworthy of saying that the Mercedes screen might look a little flashier and the Audi screen is definitely more customizable. Again, no complaints here. And I actually think it looks really, really cool when the artist is shown on the far right side. You can see their like artwork. Definitely funny to look at. But it does have that funky reverse, or the wrong direction that the RPMs go up on the tachometer. So it's a little funky. Again, none of these are game changers, especially for a car of this class, but it's a little funky. Takes a little bit of getting used to. And the new BMWs all have this kind of new shifter design and iDrive controller. Again, you have touchscreen, you don't have to use the controller, but I will say that the gloss black that's found on this car is quite annoying and gets so fingerprinty, so dirty, so quickly. But it has all the typical BMW stuff. It has your sport mode, comfort mode, Eco Pro. I'm kind of partial just to comfort in cars like this. Maybe put it in sport, individual sport for heavier steering, but in sport mode, if you really want to pass or you want to drive aggressively, this car can handle that a little bit. But I would overall just say sticking in comfort is where this car feels at home. I will give this car a really big compliment by saying that it corners really flat, and when you do put it in sport mode and you do tap the transmission over into sport as well, it feels a lot sportier than a lot of the competition does, at least for the Q7. I guess it does remind you that it's a midsize, sportier SUV when you drive it a little harder, and it doesn't feel as floaty as a Range Rover does, especially a full-size Range Rover, and it doesn't feel quite as slow or heavy. This car kind of fixes everything that the old X5 didn't have. Nicer buttons, nicer use of materials by and large. The design is beautiful, especially the front, very aggressive. Hood lines all look great. Not the best shoulder line, a little low. The mirrors aren't amazing either, but overall, you have decent visibility, you have decent size. Not quite as big as a Q7, we'll just say. However, decent legroom in the back, optional third row that really sucks. If you need a third row, don't even look at this car. Otherwise, in a 5-seater layout, the trunk's huge, the car's comfortable, it looks nice, it drives well, it corners flat, the motor's peppy, and if you have the money, swing for the M50i or swing for the M, because those are probably pure joy to drive. However, this is more than adequate, not super expensive, and I'm a big fan, so let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, as I just said, subscribe. It's your boy Rio. Peace.